Welcome to Cincinnati Soccer Talk, the podcast covering all things soccer in the Queen City. So get in touch, soccer fans. Email us at feedback@cincinnati-soccertalk.com. Now, here's your host, Nick Suberly.
What's happening, CSTers? Welcome to episode 131 of Cincinnati Soccer Talk. Hope everybody had a happy and safe Labor Day. Speaking of Labor Day, you know, FC Cincinnati has gone Memorial Day to Labor Day without losing a single match. That is incredible. Big reason for that over the weekend was Fernando Adi scoring the game winner late for FC Cincinnati. They went 2-1 over the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. We're going to talk about that match coming up. We'll also talk about Louisville week. That's right, FC Cincinnati heading down south, what could be the final time ever at Louisville Slugger Stadium. You just never know in this crazy soccer landscape we have. So we'll look ahead to that match. And, of course, we're joined by special guest Luke Sassano. He's the technical director for FC Cincinnati. He'll be joining us in about 15 to 20 minutes or so to talk about building the MLS roster for the 2019 season. So it's going to be a good show here tonight here on this Labor Day Monday. We're glad you're with us. Of course, if you want to get in touch with us, you can. Feedback at CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com is the email address. Of course, you can hit us up on Twitter as well at Cincy Soccer Talk.
Captains.
Let's give it up to James Denbo. James, thank you so much for wearing the armband for this episode of CST. We really do appreciate you helping us out. For more information on how you can wear the armband for an episode of CST, make sure you log on to CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com/support. All right, let's welcome in my cast of characters for this week. We'll start first and foremost with Rob Pierce. Rob, how are you, buddy?
Hey, Subes, how are you? How was your tubing excursion?
Oh, man, I got to tell you, Rob, my arms have never been more sore in my life. You know, when you get look, I'm not the smallest guy in the world. I'll be the first to admit it. But when you get my weight plus the force of my father-in-law trying to whip me off of the boat, yeah, I'm sore. This was 2 days ago, and my chest and my arms are. Yeah, it was a rough day on the water, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I had a pretty fun Labor Day weekend myself. Saturday, I was up in the press box. My wife and daughter had the Bailey wristbands, and then we went to see the fireworks last night with WEBN. My wife works for Western and Southern, so they kind of had a company picnic sort of deal. And so we sat down to dinner tonight, and I asked Jacqueline, my daughter, what her favorite part of the weekend was. And I would have thought it was the fireworks, but she said no, it was the match. She doesn't know all the words to the chants, but she knows enough. She was whooping and hollering, and future supporter group member. I'm telling you, we're going to pass this club down to our children. Oh,
that's fantastic! I love hearing stories like that. Glad she had a good time at the match, and it was obviously a good one to go to with the way things ended there. So looking forward to getting your take. Obviously, you were up in the press box, but I'm looking forward to getting your take on everything that went down Saturday against the Riverhounds. Let's also welcome in Brad Weigel to the show. Brad, how are you?
Good, Subes. I kind of liked your stat there. I got another one for you, and that is 33 points. FC Cincinnati has 10 wins, 2 losses, and 3 draws at home. That gives them 33 home points, which would only put them 5 points out of 8th place alone if they've never played away. That just tells you how on point their home form has been and why they sit as the first team in the USL clinch with a clinch playoff spot. So great job to Alan Koch and the team.
Yeah, that's pretty remarkable in itself when you think about that. I mean, this is what a run they're on. And the fact that all these games, at home over the summer, they've done really well at home. You win at home, and I think what we kind of gets overlooked is just how well they've played on the road this year compared to last year. So good stat there, Brad. Last but not least, we welcome back into the show the Wolfman, Bill Wolf. Bill, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well. Been kind of a crazy few days here with my wife's health and all. I don't know. Are we going to do a best and worst in this segment, or are we skipping past that?
We are going to for sure do best and worst. You're just skipping ahead, buddy.
All right. Well, I wasn't sure. We usually do it in the how's it going segment.
Let's let Nick host the show now, William. Come on now.
Well, I got them lined up. But,
well, speak of the devil, it's time for best and worst with Bill Wolf.
Yeah. There we go. So, the absolute worst was having to watch the game from the hospital. So that was definitely no fun at all. But the timing, if you maybe want to go for the best, the timing was great that my wife actually got sent off for tests, like literally just before the game started, and came back as the game started. And then we sat around 2 hours waiting for tests, and got to watch the entire game before the doctors came back in to talk about it. So it was like, things were timed out well for us to watch the game. So my worst was the hospital. Certainly happy with the timing at the hospital, but I think on my best, I talked about this quite a bit, and obviously everybody's excited about Adi's goal, but I had made the comment that Adi needs to score his first goal in front of the Bailey, and he got to do that, and I think that was exciting and one of the best moments of the game.
Yeah, I've been kind of clamoring for, and this is one of the things it's not to fault FC Cincinnati, but we, as a fan base, I can't recall, and I know Rob and I we were talking about it late Saturday night about the latest go-ahead goal in FC Cincinnati history at Nippert Stadium. Obviously, they had a PK on Labor Day, believe it or not, a couple years ago that beat St. Louis. Sean Nicoli had a penalty kick there in year one, but just the fact that a late, thrilling comeback win, at, not necessarily at the death, but just something late that just kind of that momentum swept them. It almost swept them to victory. I think that's one of those wins that they just haven't had over those 3 years.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's 88th minute isn't exactly at the death, but it's still very late, and coming from behind where we haven't had much of that this whole run. I think they were saying it was like over 1,000 minutes or something since we've been behind. So, great to see that. Great to see a late goal and just that energy that the team never quit and got it done. So,
well, one of those guys who knows exactly to the second how many minutes they did not trail was Rob Pierce. So, Rob, why don't you give us your best and worst?
My best will be the fact that they rallied from behind. The exact minutes, I don't have seconds.
What?
But the 1,161 minutes since FC Cincinnati last trailed in a match. And that is my best. Adi, great goal, great moment. It could be goal of the year, could be moment of the year, could be both. But I'm looking at how this team responded after kind of sitting on their heels for a while, and then Pittsburgh finally put one through. And then just to dig down deep, and of course, Alan Koch switched to that 3-5-2 out of that 4-2-3-1 and rallied. That would be my best. My worst, I really don't have a worst. I could pick something, but I don't want to take anyone else's. So my worst is that I missed.
Too late. I think you took Brad.
I think I did too. Sorry about that, Brad. I was just kind of completing a thought. I did not mean to take it, but the worst, like I said, I really don't have a worst. So mine is kind of that I missed all the pregame festivities. I love going to Mecklenburg's before the match, but that's kind of a conflict if I'm going to be in the press box. And don't get me wrong, I loved being in the press box. It's kind of back in my element a bit there, and I could feel that adrenaline kick in as I was writing after the match. Kind of like having an IV put in you. But I could hear the march down the concourse. You can't hear much from behind that glass, but I could hear that for sure. And then the goal at the end here in the stadium erupt. I could definitely hear that too.
All right, Brad. Since Rob stole your thunder there a little bit, your best and worst.
My worst is the first 70 minutes of the match because I think a lot of fans felt, here we go again. It kind of looked like it was going to be another one of those Louisville matches where Louisville packs it in. We can't break them down. Happened against Nashville. It's happened against other teams like Rochester in the past and Pittsburgh earlier. So that was kind of my worst. But my best as Rob just said earlier, his move to the 3-5-2, it was really drawn to that because of Pa Konate's injury. So he had to bring in Lahoud. He moved him into the midfield. He made a back three with Hoyt and Lasso. And And then he brought in Audie to come in up top, and you really saw, I mean, like flick of a switch, you saw them take over the game. So I got to give credit to Allen there, and I do have to say, watching Audie almost take Coach Koch out in the celebration. Poor guy probably had to ice himself the next morning because of that impact from Audie. But that was a cool moment to see the whole team come around Koch and just celebrate, and you could kind of see. It was almost like you would seen a step take place. You'd seen a defining moment that the team, they've been struggling, they've been knocking through, hitting that ceiling, and they finally broke through. And I think that was just all that emotion coming out in that moment. So that was really cool to see.
So my best and worst are a combination of actually they kind of lead to one another. FC Cincinnati probably should have been down 3-0. They really should have been. I mean, Kenny Walker clearly fouled. I can't remember who it was in the box in the first half, but it was a clear penalty that didn't get called. Lasso, obviously, the penalty in the second half, clear penalty. They said he touched. I did not see a touch on the ball. But that to me, and by the way, already on a yellow card, very, very, very close to being sent off. I know it wasn't really yellow worthy of a tackle, but not his best night, right? Then they get scored on after the penalty miss. They probably should have been down 3-0. And the fact that, and Brad, you kind of alluded to it, the first 7 minutes was rough, right? But they still found a way to win. Like, that doesn't happen to Cincinnati teams. Like, in general, when they play poorly, it's usually a stinker, and it just doesn't happen. But the fact that FC Cincinnati, this is what leads to my good, is the fact that for how poorly they played, they found a way to get it done, which is, I guess, in a way, a sign of a team that is worthy of contending for a USL championship. Your thoughts on that, Brad?
It's just like I said, it's that moment. The guys that played really well together. It's just something like you said. Like, we've had Jeremy Hill in this town, fumble the ball late against Pittsburgh. And, it's just good to see us finally end up on the right side of things, especially against one of our peers that we've honestly struggled beating. Lily Ball's killed FC Cincinnati the last 3 years, and to finally get a win against him in league play, that was a big moment.
Yeah, back-to-back wins over Bob Lilly's teams. If you include the U.S. Open Cup match earlier in the spring, they get it done over the weekend. They finally concede and trail in a match. They come back, a late comeback victory. But to see Fernando Adi get the game winner in front of the Bailey, I mean, that was – you talk about goosebumps. Now, I watched the match late. I didn't get a chance to start the match until about 11 p.m., so I'm watching it in bed. My wife's asleep, and when Adi scored that goal, I literally had to grab 2 pillows over my face and just scream as loud as I could. I mean, that was amazing. The way he scored there late, especially after just picking up a yellow card, I think that just fired him up a little bit more. But what a match. It was exciting to see. And, hey, look, they continue their unbeaten run. They're now at 16 matches unbeaten, 13 points clear of Louisville, which we'll be discussing a little bit later on here on this very program. I know, obviously, we're all excited about Fernando Adi finally getting on that score sheet. Where does he go from here, gents? I mean, are we going to continue to see him in more of a super sub type role, or do you expect to see him get some starts down the stretch here?
We already started once, so
right.
It's not like,
I mean, more starts.
Yeah, I think it's a fitness thing, and if he continues to get more and more fit and is able to start, he'll start, and then it's going to come down to Allen. Whoever's scoring is going to get in. I mean, strikers are like that. It's a confidence thing. So, once they start to score, they get hot. If they don't score, they get frustrated and they kind of get it, into their head and they stop scoring for a while. So, it's not going to be about, who's the big name and the big dollars. It's going to be about who's getting the job done, I think.
I don't want to go too far in this direction, but I wonder if we'll see him start at Nippert because of the turf. I mean, that's all I'll say about that. I don't want to go too much into that, but I think you could see him starting some on the road.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're going to probably see him be rolled out more on the games that'll be played on grass, and I think in the playoffs towards the end of the year, I think he's gonna have to play in the playoffs. I believe he's gonna start. He should start as long as he's playing well, putting goals in the back of the net. I think that's going across the board. I think all the guys know each and every week. It's who practices the best and performs the best is going to play. We've seen Spencer Ritchie now. Is he our starting goalkeeper? He had a heck of a match. He did wonderful, and we've seen him play more and more. You've got, Alashe, Kenny Walker, you got Lahoud in the midfield. So I think all the positions are still up in the air. And I wouldn't say just because he's a DP, he's going to be penciled in, but I think we will see him more.
Well, as long as he continues to score goals, well, now that he's on one. Hey, look, he finally removed the pool cover, and now he's ready to jump in. Hopefully score loads more goals for FC Cincinnati, especially down the stretch here in this playoff run. So good win for the club. They get that win over Lilyball, 2-1 over the weekend, and now they continue to move forward. And obviously they have a big one next week against Louisville, which we will talk about here a little bit later on the show. But we are really excited now to welcome to the Kings Hammer Hotline the technical director for FC Cincinnati. He's Luke Sassano, and he joins us now. Luke, welcome back to Cincinnati Soccer Talk. How are you?
Hey, guys. It's been way too long. Thanks for having me back on.
It has been a while. The last time we talked with you was right when you first got the gig, and a lot has happened since then. Obviously, now FC Cincinnati has joined the Major League Soccer ranks, and the club has signed their first designated player. So why don't you fill us in a little bit on how busy you've been, Luke?
Unfortunately, there's not enough hours in the day, but we have a fantastic staff, not just on the technical side, but throughout the club that has been working pretty much since go, even before the MLS announcement, to make sure that we would be prepared for whatever came out. And then obviously, once the announcement came through, it's really been hitting the ground running. So I know there's a lot of people besides myself that have been putting in a lot of hours to try to make sure that not only do we finish this USL season in the best fashion possible, but also start to think on the horizon and what's next. So it's definitely been a lot of work, exciting work, challenging work. Obviously on the technical side, when we talk about, trying to integrate 3 new players into the team, especially at one point, you talk about trying to integrate 1 new player is a challenge, and especially with the team that's been doing very well. But when you have to integrate 3 new faces, 3 different personalities, guys with 3 different backgrounds, 3 different ways of working, it's a big challenge. But you got to give credit to Alan, his coaching staff, the group, the players in the locker room, the medical staff, everybody that supported the transition. And as we've gone through that, we hope the additions will help us as we make this push towards the end of the season. And obviously it's going to be a new chapter in the club's history pretty soon. So we've been working pretty hard, but we still got a lot of work ahead of us.
I want to go back to earlier on in the season when you first joined the club, and talk about, and correct me if I'm wrong, how involved were you in bringing Mike Lahoud to the club? Because he's had a really big impact on the club this season for FC Cincinnati. He's been lights out in the midfield.
Yeah, Mike, opportunity really arose at the right timing. Coincidentally, right after I started here, I always tracked Mike since he was with us in New York, and then obviously we moved him to Miami. And I've always been personally a fan of his, not just for obviously what he brings on the field, but also off the field. He has a tremendous character, strong guy in the locker room, and we knew we had an opportunity to get him on a very, very favorable financial deal for us. But more importantly, we were able to get a player that can come in and compete with the group. Because to be honest, when I came in, the group is very talented. You could arguably say the group was good enough to compete for a USL championship. So we were very, very methodical and calculated when we looked at certain player opportunities and really dive in how would that affect the fabric of the group. And you have to give Alan credit, Jeff Birding, Carl, from ownership all the way down, that there's a clear vision and people working together to implement certain decisions. So by all means, I can't take the credit. It's definitely a team effort to get a player like Michael in and the rest of the guys. So we're just excited he was able to join us, and I know he's been he's been doing well for us thus far, and we're hoping it's going to continue.
Hey, Luke, Rob Pierce here. You're kind of in a unique position this season. What's it like building a roster for MLS while you're still playing in USL? Looking ahead to MLS in 2019, what have been some of the challenges associated with that?
Yeah, there's definitely some advantages. There's some opportunities, obviously, when you have a team that's already existing and you have guys that are top-level players that are competing day in, day out. So there's definitely some positives of having a group and a culture that's already been created. But also the big challenges is the sensitive aspect of it. You have players and families and guys that have been committed to the project since day one, with the opportunity not only to obviously win the USL Championship this year and make a strong run, but with the hope that they can continue with the team as we embark on this new adventure. And again, I always go back and with Alan and with Jeff, we give credit to the group because the guys have been phenomenal in training and understanding that this is a very, very unique situation. It's also a very unique situation to have a DP playing in the USL. And it's also a unique situation to have guys that could be starters on other teams in the USL fighting day in, day out. I think somebody mentioned it earlier. We have a great group that gets rotated. And I think Alan has and his coaching staff have really done a great job keeping that hunger alive for each player to know that there's an opportunity on the horizon if they work hard and they take their opportunity and they run with it. Because at the end of the day, it's the guys that are going to be performing, and it's trying to find the right run of players that can come together collectively and continue to push each other every day in training. But definitely the challenges with building a team are protecting what we have right now, which is something very special. We have a winning culture. We have a fan base that is fantastic and supporting our guys day in, day out. We have an ownership that's, again, fantastic and it giving us the resources that we need to be successful on the field. So it's also being very sensitive with that aspect, but also knowing that as we, again, embark on this new adventure, that we don't want to be naive into the competition and the expectations. We just want to be well prepared, and we want to make decisions that, regardless if they're ones that are going to impact us this year, but they're also going to be ones that are going to impact us next year. And I think when we set out on our kind of technical decision making in March, it was try to find a couple guys in the summer that we felt could come in and continue to compete with the group and drive the group forward. And obviously with Pa and Fatai and Adi, we felt like we brought in three guys that were going to help to also raise the level of the group, even though we were doing very well, but continue to raise that, because I think in this line of work, you cannot be content. You always have to be pushing the envelope and pushing to new heights and where can we get. And it's really, again, it comes from Carl, it comes from Jeff. I can say that. I'm sure you guys, if you've spoken to Jeff, you can see that, the fire. We all have this relentless pursuit of success, and we want to do everything in our power to make sure we can have this club prepared not only for the rest of the season, but also well into the future. So I'm rambling on a little bit because there's been a lot of great things, and it's a great question that we work through every day, and we want to be very methodical in our challenges and how we approach them, and make sure that when we do have a plan, that we're also able to pivot from the plan and make sure that we have not just plan A, B, C, but also plan D, E, F. So, especially with a short runway, it's not the easiest, but again, it's an exciting challenge, and one that for me personally, and I know for our staff, we're really just excited to be a part of it.
Hey, don't worry about rambling on here. I mean, you started here in March, so in the last 6 months, you've done more than most guys in your position have done in soccer in years. So that is completely all right. But you talked about some additions, and you brought in quite a haul this summer. You brought in Pa Kanote from Serie A. You brought in Fatai Elijah, who was kind of getting into the U.S. men's national team setup a couple years ago. And you brought in Fernando Adi, our first DP, and they're playing now. I know a lot of fans have seen them come in, but can you go into a little bit about how the process of getting those guys to come in, some of the relationships and working with MLS to get those guys here?
Yeah, definitely. And I will start off by saying it was for sure a we effort, all the way from Carl Williams' decision making along with Jeff, and also from Alan. Alan and the coaching staff was a pretty key part of the recruitment process. And I'll go with the big time. Number one for us is our fan base. When you can have 25,000 people at a game, that does a lot of recruiting for us, in all seriousness. So when we embarked on, trying to figure out not only what positions did we feel we needed to get maybe either competition at, or we just wanted to maybe up the level. Specifically, we know Blake has done a fantastic job for us this year, but we also know that we needed to get a little deeper in that position. And I think finding a player like Pa, who's still a young player, who's been with the Swedish national team, although he just switched to Guinea for the African Cup Nations. We wanted to get a player that was young, hungry, looking for a change of scenery. It took us a couple months, but we were once we narrowed into really what we wanted out of that position, Paul was a player that we took a strong look at. And again, he's a guy that was, coming from Malmo, champions in Sweden, playing Champions League, going to Spal in Serie A, and maybe not settling in as quickly as he thought. And it was really an opportunity that arose for us. And I think, his first start, obviously, in Atlanta, and then his, first start at home this past weekend, he's still getting his legs underneath him a bit, but we're definitely excited to have him and be competing with the group. So it was one that, took probably a couple months to get across the finish line. But again, with Paul, we're very excited. And with Fatai was another player that, we've really been stressing. Although we have the support from ownership and the resources, let's try to find undervalued players and players that are in unique situations that we may be able to capitalize on. And I think Fatai was one of those guys that fell into that situation. He's played over 80 times for San Jose in the MLS. He's called in national team camps before. He's under 25. And it was a position that we felt we could still, look to gain a little bit more depth in. And when you have Richie Ryan that's still hurt, Tyler Gibson that was just coming back from an injury, we did feel that we wanted to also get a little bit more competition in that position. And to get a player like Fatai to come in early with us this summer was also an exciting thing. So credit to Fatai and credit to Pa, again, for those two to have the mentality, because it's not always easy for a player that's maybe played in the MLS, that's used and accustomed to, grass training facilities, first class travel accommodations, playing in stadiums that when they're on the road, they're still playing in 15, 20,000 seat stadiums. So that's a big mental adjustment. So, and we're not naive to think that doesn't exist, but it's important to attack that. And it's really important to really dive into the player's mentality. And we want players that want to be here. We want players that want to be playing for FC Cincinnati, that want to be in Cincinnati. And I think that's a big piece of our recruitment is when we go after guys, is to get those players that want to be here. Sometimes it's easier said when the general question can be like, oh, well, everybody wants to be in the MLS. Well, there's specific profiles that we look after of players that want to come here. And on top of that, when you go to a player like Adi, who obviously, when we talked about what kind of player we wanted to bring in, and I remember, speaking to Jeff about what kind of player could we financially do it. And again, you have to give a lot of credit to Jeff and Carl for willing to make that type of investment early on. It's not every time that, we have a team that we felt was very capable of winning the USL Championship, and we wanted to get better. And that does not happen in every club, in every environment. So with Adi, it was another piece of it. But you're also, again, dealing with a player who scored the game winner for Portland 2-1, and then he's on a flight the next morning to a city that he'd never been to, because a part of the deal was it had to be very hush-hush. And all of a sudden he's doing a press conference the next day in a new city with a new club that he's excited to be there, without his wife, without his young daughter. And so there's a lot of unique challenges that go into that. And credit to him for, again, stepping up to a new challenge and coming to not only a new club and an exciting atmosphere, but you're coming to a different league. You're coming to the second division. And again, I stress that it's just a real mentality that some players have to deal with, and not in a negative or a bad way, but you don't really feel it until you see it. And again, credit to Adi from the very beginning wanting to play here. And I think now that he's finally gone through the moving transition and the fitness has started to come up in a positive way, he seems like he's settling in. And after scoring that goal, the game winner against Pittsburgh, that albeit we did not have our best performance, but I will say that championship teams tend to find ways to win games no matter what. And I think that you could feel it in the crowd. You could really feel it in the locker room after the game, that was, and not just because it was Adi scoring, but because it was that moment, 88th minute, beating Pittsburgh at home in front of the Bailey, in front of 26,000 people. It was really something that capped off a lot of energy and a lot of hard work from not just the new players that we've brought into the group, but also the group itself. And it takes a strong locker room to be willing to integrate players of different levels, different pay scales, into a group that is very, very tight already. So it was just an incredible moment. I don't know if you can tell, I lost my voice a little bit because besides screaming at the referee from the press box, I was celebrating the moment that this is what professional sports is all about. It's a city, it's a club, it's the players, it's the fans, it's ownership, it's everybody that works for the club that can find one moment in the game that can really take over the emotion. And it was a really exciting way to end it. And also the beauty about professional sports is now we have to forget about it because now we have 7 games left in the regular season. We have a big game against Louisville on Saturday night. And it's back to work. And those are the teams, the teams that can grind through those moments of maybe when it's not working in a game, maybe the tactics aren't there, maybe a couple players are off, of figuring out a way to win the game. And for me, that was really something special to see. And I know for Alan and for Jeff and for the staff, it was really an incredible just moment of cultivation.
We're hanging out with technical director from FC Cincinnati, Luke Sassano, here on Cincinnati Soccer Talk. And Luke, obviously you hit on obviously the new signings for FC Cincinnati. Obviously Fernando Adi being the first designated player. How does that affect your plans for a designated player in 2019 for the Major League Soccer side?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we got a little bit of work done early, which we set out to do. But I will say that we're hopeful that we'll be able to find another player that fits Adi's profile as well, in terms of another DP. But it also allows us to be even more so patient, but also aggressive for the players that we want. And I don't think it's any secret about our ambitions as a club, to come out next year and really continue the presence and the culture that we've set this year. So having said that, we're looking for different type of players, whether it's players that will use TAM as a mechanism to bring in a highly skilled players at good ages, or whether it's using DP tags on certain players, because a DP could be anywhere from 600,000 until however much money you have available to spend. So there's different guys that we've thought about and have passed through. And at the end of the day, it's really just fantastic that we can have these conversations, that we have an ownership group that even after paying $150 million for a franchise fee, $40 million for a training facility, and then plans on building a brand new state-of-the-art stadium downtown, it's a big financial commitment. And we know we have the resources to be competitive, but also to be smart. We want to be very clever in the business we do. We want to bring in guys, again, as I said earlier, that are hungry, that are a good age, that want to come here and compete for something bigger than themselves. And it does take a special process to go through and a special recruitment part to go through as well. But we're definitely excited about it. And, I would envision us having another DP at some time next year. but this also allows us to be more patient and allows us to really survey the marketplace and knowing that sometimes in Europe, when the window is ending in June, the contracts are ending in June, it just is a little bit on timing as well, that you may be able to find players that are able to get out of their contracts earlier because of the situations with their club. So it allows us to have a little bit more patience, but still have that aggressive mentality of being prepared for the opportunity that arises.
So, Luke, I know we've heard a lot of reports about you scouting the globe, looking for talent. Maybe you can share with our listeners some of the places, countries, et cetera, you've been to, so we have an idea of what markets you're looking in.
Yeah, I'm almost up to Diamond on Delta Sky Miles. So it's been it's been quite an exciting and very, very taxing past couple months. But I will say, ventured down to Colombia, ventured to Europe, Scandinavia, Germany, England, and these are just kind of the tips of the iceberg. I think there's a couple more trips that are coming up, and it's not only so much of me traveling, but we have, really under the radar people in different countries that is sourcing information for us. So whether or not myself can travel or obviously Alan's pretty busy right now, but we have people that, we're relying on in different countries. For instance, we have Pa Maduka right now who just joined us, and Pa is currently in Europe. So we have different people stationed in different parts of the globe in specific markets that we feel can translate to our group, because the global market is a big place, and sometimes when you try to look everywhere, you really let a lot of things fall through the net. So I think we came up with a very strategic way of going after players that we feel can quickly assimilate to the MLS market, come into a city like Cincinnati, where they're comfortable and where they feel that they can make their own impact. And those are certain markets, when we talk about Switzerland, we talk about Belgium, we talk about Germany, we talk about Scandinavia, and then obviously venturing into South America, Argentina, Colombia, Paraguay, Chile, Uruguay. These are some countries that have always been known to have very good talent. And then even moving to Central America, where you have Costa Rica, Panama, Honduras. You have other countries that are still sourcing pretty good talent that translate well to MLS, but maybe are a different price point and something that's going to fit into our roster as well. So we've really been targeting certain markets, but we also have been having some very, very good conversations with specific players that we may feel will be helpful to contribute next year.
Well, you talked about the ownership's investment in the practice facility out in Milford. You've talked about recruitment, bringing players in. But one of the big keys to the MLS salary cap budgeting system is the homegrown player. And I know the academy is a big part of your guys' plans, but we haven't really heard or seen too much about that. Do you guys have an idea when you might expect a development academy to be in place and what that might start looking like as we see that be formed?
No, that's a fantastic point. And I think even when you're building a roster, to have players that are considered homegrowns and not counting against the cap is a big advantage. You look at some teams around the league that have done a pretty good job of that. And we eventually want to be one of those teams. We want to be developing our own players. We want to be developing players here in Cincinnati that can help and produce for the first team. Because at the end of the day, besides an investment strategy, it's also player development. And it's making sure that we're very connected to the community. And I will start off by saying we have some fantastic youth clubs in Cincinnati already doing a lot of great things. And it's for us as a professional club to be an overlay of that. And, being a professional academy, it's not for every player. It's for the players that, we feel that have that path to maybe someday be a professional player. And obviously that's a process, that takes a decent amount of time. Now we expect to have some, announcements here on the youth development in the next couple of weeks. We're excited about what the future will hold in that capacity. We also want to make sure that we have a lot of things going on as well. And when we have the first team coming to the MLS next year, having a lot of energy on that, but also remembering that we want to have a lot of energy on the professional academy as well. So we're being very calculated, and we probably haven't been out as much in front of it, only because we have been very calculated in timing-wise. And I think we want to make sure that we are making the right connections within the community, that we're talking to the right people, and that we're listening. Because I think a big piece of what we're trying to build here is a community club at the end of the day. This is something that we all want to work. We want to grow the base of soccer here in Cincinnati. And again, with the investment from Carl and the ownership group, to allow that to come to fruition and be patient with that process is something that is going to hopefully lay a footprint for the professional landscape in Cincinnati for years and years to come. And not just on the competitive, youth sector. You also have grassroots programs going into parts of Cincinnati that are low socioeconomic communities and introducing the game, whether it's building a futsal court or it's introducing some of our players. Omar Cummings has done a great job being in the community, introducing the sport. And I think you're going to see a bit more of that project, because we want to be influencing kids that don't have the ability to financially afford to play the game. I played the sport. I went through the youth club, the whole U.S. soccer system. It's not the cheapest sport. And I think it goes back to, again, the ownership's commitment. We're going to have a fully funded professional academy, where kids are not going to be required to pay any money to play in it. So that's a big piece of being allowed to do things the right way, when you are incentivizing basically on development and not so much on who can afford to play the game. And it's a very interconnected process, because, again, I'll stress our youth clubs here in Cincinnati and even the greater Cincinnati region have really done a fantastic job. We've been going around to different youth clubs and speaking to people, seeing the coaches, seeing how they do training sessions, because, again, it's a community-based professional club, and we want to make sure we maintain the relationships in the community as well.
So, Luke, we've talked a little bit about the DA Academy just now. Obviously, FCC has been involved with the CDA, the Cincinnati Development Academy, on the women's side of the program. There's some very differences in how that would be set up. Obviously, MLS isn't going to be interested in you having more of a sponsorship role, but being more active on the DA side. Maybe you can compare and contrast that a little bit for listeners, and also maybe comment on whether you see the DA growing to both sides, both genders down the road.
No, definitely. I will say, first and foremost, our absolute goal is to have the DA on both sides of the equation. I think what speeds up the process on the boys' side is we obviously have a professional team. So that's more so of why there's such a clear trajectory on that side. And when you're dealing with MLS and obviously requirements, it's just a much clearer investment decision. Having said that, the investment and the sponsorship and the CDA has been something that's very important to us. It's been in a way of trying to, again, subsidize costs and trying to be connecting the women's side of soccer here in Cincinnati. And I think that's only going to grow. Obviously with the vision of the club and where things are going, I don't think it's any short-sightedness or secret that we want to have a women's program full blown, and that's a conversation that obviously Jeff has supported. It's just the timing in that process as well, because when you do have a professional first team, there are incentives that you do have to have a DA academy. So I'm very hopeful that those decisions will come obviously in the near future rather than in the long term, because we're very supportive of both our girls and boys soccer players here in Cincinnati and the greater Cincinnati region. And we want to make sure that that connectivity continues, because it's very important for the growth of the game. And that's something we're fully supportive of.
Hey, Luke, was just wondering if FC Cincinnati was looking at some of the more recent expansion teams as a model. I'm talking about like LAFC, Atlanta, Orlando, Minnesota, or is it none of the above? And you're kind of looking to just kind of have your own category for FC Cincinnati?
Yeah, obviously, we've looked at pretty much every MLS club, first team and academy that we feel we can take bits and pieces from. But it's also being very, very real about our market, and that it's very different from many of the markets in the U.S. To be frank, in a good way, and also in a way that is a bit challenging. And so we're going to definitely pave our own path in what fits in our market, and make sure that we're making decisions in terms of age groups, in terms of who we're working with, that's going to benefit not just FCC, but benefit Cincinnati soccer and the Cincinnati region in the short term, but also in the long term. So it goes back to we're being very calculated in our conversations and making sure that we have our information and our research has been done. And when we make a decision, that it's taken into account that there's going to be a lot of optimism, and there's going to be a lot of still unique challenges that we're going to have to overcome. But as long as we're doing it with the best interest of the players, that for me is always going to win out. And I think that's something that we've always tried to build off of, is to try to build something that's going to be in the best interest of the players. Because again, not every player in a professional academy is able to find that end route. So it's also to build good people as well along the way. And that's definitely something we pride ourselves in.
Well, Luke, we know you're a busy man. We really do appreciate you spending a few moments with us. We don't know. We knew Jeff Birding was busy, but I think you might have even topped Jeff since the Major League Soccer announcement. But we appreciate you being with us. You're always welcome back, and we look forward to hearing more about the new signings and everything going on with MLS in 2019.
Fantastic, guys. Thanks for having me on. And next time we'll have to do this over dinner, because it'll be even more enjoyable conversation, I'm sure.
I like the sound of even better. I like the sound of that, Luke. We appreciate you being with us, buddy.
All right, guys. Have a good one, huh?
That's Luke Sassano joining us on the Kings Hammer Hotline. Yeah, I'm taking him up on that offer. You don't know me. I don't turn down a meal, folks. That was good stuff from Luke. He brings it every time he's been on the show. So we appreciate him being with us on CST. All right, it's that time of the month. FC Cincinnati, Cincinnati Soccer Talk. It's the first week of the month. So what does that mean? We shout out every single supporter of CST. So buckle up, folks. Here we go. Thanks to Tim Bronson with King's Hammer, Matt Adamczyk, Pat Suberling, Mama Subes, Brian Malone, Jamie Smed, Mike Hudson, Jonas Tom, Jack Emery, Mike Bowman, Kathleen Francis, Jesse King, Teresa Everidge, Matt Imholt. Liverpool is superior to Man United.
They are.
For now. Sagan Sagai, Jesse Gill, Arthur Oliva, Brian Griffin, Reese Johnson, Josh Leese, Scott Kaplan, Jason DeBrewer, Paul Hetker, Mattis Brumback, Courtney Rice, Joe Collier, Christina Sharma, Nate Hale, Adam Alexander, Mike Berryman, Dan Village, Jeff Egan, Matthew Ryan, Joseph Wells, Stephen Buckeridge, Alec Mackey, Anthony Zawoski, Angela Cardwell, James Denbo, John Davidson, Patrick Lonnie, Dave Tangler, Alex Yursky, Chris DeMeo, Claire Hughes, Carl Feit, Scott Griffith, Derek Smed, Greg Harrell, Jack Doyle, the Cincy Superfan Tom Grabo, Tim and Tina Harris, Christopher Howard, Sarah Spriggs, Michael Winland, Scott Party, Richard Rolson, Brandon Jones, Chima John, Gary Randolph, AJ Stork, Jamie Lay, Matthew Moore, Colin Rink, Robert Finley, Kevin Johnston, Doug Ross, and Andy Rosen. All of you, thank you. We cannot thank you enough for supporting us here at Cincinnati Soccer Talk, being able to do the live stream, putting out the podcast, the articles we write. It's tremendous. Thank you so much for supporting us here on the show. If you'd like to support Cincinnati Soccer Talk, you can by heading over to cincinnati-soccertalk.com/support. All right, guys.
I just want to say one thing real quick about Luke Sassano. And sorry for interrupting you here, but
sure.
It's coming fast, guys. I mean, MLS Cup is December 8th. So we only have, 3 months, a little over 3 months till when we get our expansion draft, where we get the first 5 players, where we get to pick from all the other teams. And then a month after that is combine and MLS Super Draft and all that. So we are literally within the next 4 months here going to have a humongous amount of news and information and new additions, signings coming our way. So it's exciting, and the guy's got a lot on his plate, and I don't think it's going to clear anytime soon.
No, it's not. Oh, by the way, FC Cincinnati is still trying to win a USL championship, while that's happening. So the march to match day is going to be a good one this week. We're talking Louisville. What could be the last time? It could be the last time, guys, that FC Cincinnati plays at Louisville Slugger Field. That baseball pitch down there. But it's happening. They play this weekend. First time that FC Cincinnati is making the trip down to Louisville for this year. Are we sad to see it go? I mean, look, there is a remote possibility that they could play in an Open Cup down the road, but it's highly unlikely. But it could be.
I think it's possible, but
it is.
I think the fun thing is they'll probably be in their new stadium. So then, do they take us back to Slugger Field just to piss us off?
That's pretty funny, Bill. Louisville coming off of an interesting week, losing last week to Toronto FC2, which made our draw with Toronto FC2 feel a little bit better, I guess, back in June when that went down. And then they drew over their, I guess it was Friday night, with the Charleston Battery. So 13 points separate FC Cincinnati and Louisville. Louisville does have a game in hand, but I would say that Louisville coming in not on their finest form. Meanwhile, FC Cincinnati is the hottest team in the league. But none of that matters when these two teams get together. It's going to be it's just going to be a what do you call it? A slobber knocker, Rob Pierce. It's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, that's probably the right term. Yeah, anything goes on that baseball field. They know how to use that home field advantage to their advantage, and I know they've struggled recently, but I don't count them out at home.
Oh, for sure, no way. Not in this series. There's no way I count Louisville out. It's going to be a tough, hard-fought match. That they're going to be the one who wants to end Cincinnati's unbeaten run. It's basically going to be the best part of their season, even though they had a pretty deep open run themselves. But it's a significant match. I wouldn't say for the seeding standpoint, Bill, but it's still Louisville Cincinnati.
Oh yeah, I mean it's going to be a slugfest, a hate match the entire time. I mean it is what it is. I was just actually checking my stats just a second ago, and I think if we win this one, we're almost guaranteed a first round home playoff game. I think Indy would be the only possible spoiler for that. So if they would not win this weekend or whatever, then I think we would cement not just a playoff but a home playoff. So again, there's a lot on the line for this. Just knocking stuff down and securing those spots now.
Brad, the last time these two teams faced off, you had an eventful night. Did you not?
Go ahead.
Did you not have an eventful night down there in Louisville, along with Mama Subs and Papa Subs?
I was going to say, I had bad influences around me, so I'm not responsible for them. Yeah, Mama Subs, man, she just gets a little Diet Coke in her and she gets all fiery. So she's sprightly. But no, it's going to be – I'm going to miss having them as a rivalry because their fan base is so passionate, even though we don't necessarily get along. It's good. It's what makes soccer interesting, and I'm scared that when we head to Major League Soccer, we're not going to have that team that has that close proximity, the rivalry, the engaging fan base like Louisville does. So it's going to be kind of a bittersweet moment. I hope this is the last time we face them because I don't want to have to face them in the playoffs because they just seem to have our number this year. But I do wish them the best just starting in 2019.
So I before you cut in here, Rob, I fully expect there will be one matchup in the playoffs. I just have that sense that it's going to shake out Louisville comes to Nippert in the Eastern Conference Finals. Would we have it any other way? I mean, I know we don't want to face them, but just for the story, for what this rivalry has become, would you be surprised if that's how it ended up, Rob?
I don't think. I think fate wouldn't have it any other way. Brad brought up a point about trying to, once the club gets into MLS, developing a big rival like that. That's where I think FC Cincinnati fans might miss Louisville a little bit, because maybe with Nashville, if the Crew were to somehow stay around, I mean, that would be perfect. But kind of missing that natural rivalry there that FCC has with Louisville.
And again, there is the chance down the road that the two teams will meet up in the Open Cup. Is there anything over the short 3-year history of this rivalry, what stands out to you, Bill? What's been your favorite moment?
Oh, favorite moment? God, I hate these guys. Every time we beat them, I mean, and it's not been enough. I mean, they've come up too many times to Nippert Stadium and beat us. But yeah, certainly, I would say last year when we went down there and beat them, that was a good one. Yeah, but didn't we beat them twice at their?
No, we only beat them once last year.
Once, okay.
Well, twice if you count the Open Cup.
That was it.
That was here.
Right.
That was up here. Yeah, we got crushed the one game, and then we beat them the other.
Yep.
And that was the game Semdovic got sent off.
Yeah. Yes.
And that was
Streamergate.
Yeah, that was the game that Brad was at.
That was Streamergate. Yeah. Made it all 82 minutes.
Was that your memorable moment of this rivalry, Brad?
Oh, there's so many memorable. I mean, the non-bite gate.
That can't be a favorite moment, right?
The shoes melting. I deal with plastic. It's impossible. So that was another funny one. I don't know. These guys, they kind of have our number.
How about when we posted good old James O'Connor's beehive photo on the big board at Nippert?
The best. It wasn't even at the game, but yes, you're right. From just before the Open Cup last year, Bill Grandesto's rant. That has to be my favorite moment in the rivalry. I think even the coaching and front office staffs enjoyed that.
Oh, Bill. I wonder what he's up to. Haven't heard from him in a few weeks. Yeah. Well.
Haven't gotten any collect calls.
No, we have not. So, my favorite moment of the rivalry, probably, I'm going to go back to, I think it was the first year. FC Cincinnati had to win I think it was 2-0. They had to win 2-0 to win the what we call the Derby River Cup or whatever. And they got it done. That was, on that really hot day. Of course, I look fondly on my mom and dad being thrown out of the game down in Louisville. I mean, that's something I can tell my children for years and years and years.
Grandma's a hooligan.
She is so crazy.
But I think it's believable though.
Oh yeah, she's crazy.
She's also listening.
Oh, I know. I'm fully aware. I mean crazy in a good way. I've never seen her more. No. I'm being serious. Obviously I've been in this world 37 years. My dad was a Bengals season ticket holder. We watched the Reds growing up, but I've never seen her more passionate about anything other than her grandchildren than this team. It's crazy. I'm surprised. But yeah, she's crazy for FC Cincinnati, man. That's pretty cool to see. But no, I will always tell that story, Mother. Sorry, but you getting kicked out of a sporting event, something I can say I've never done. So there's that. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be – I'm looking forward to this weekend's match. And what could potentially be the last time playing at Louisville Slugger Stadium. I don't think we'll miss the field. But, yeah, there's so much.
Hopefully everybody lasts long enough to see the end of the game.
Yeah, and I'm really curious, too, because of what happened last year, how many folks are planning on going down. I haven't heard I know that there's a bus trip next week this weekend, I should say. Ballast Point Brewing is putting it together. By the way, $25 gets you a seat on the bus. It does not get you a ticket to the match, but you can get that at Molly Malone's. So I know that there's a bus trip being organized, but, whereas last year, I know there was the bus trip and I know there were folks that were driving down, but I don't know, maybe I'm just not hearing the same kind of fervor this year.
Well, it's safe to say that we will definitely have more than any of the roadies brought to Louisville.
Oh, well, we went there. Anyway, it's going to be a fun match. Make sure you check out March to Match Day. I can't speak. A little bit later on this week, Brian's going to put that together, as always. He'll either be meeting with someone from the Coopers or Barrel Proof. I'm not sure. Do you have any idea on that, Brad? You're not in the scoop on that? All right, never mind.
No idea.
Let's move on then. Let's begin to wrap up episode 131 of CST. What a good show we had this week. We had the Riverhounds comeback win. Fernando Adi getting on the score sheet. Great information from Luke Sassano talking about building the roster for next year, as well as keeping an eye on a USL championship. And, of course, Louisville this upcoming week. What a good show this week. I'll start with you, Rob. Your final thoughts as we begin to get out of here?
My final thought is to wish Michael Lahoud and Pakanate best of luck in the African Cup of Nations. Lahoud will be playing for his native Sierra Leone, and Kanate will be using his one-time FIFA allowed nationality switch and playing for Guinea, where his father is from. From the FCC perspective, it stinks that they're going to miss the Louisville match. That's a big one, but there's plenty of depth. I'm sure we'll see Blake Smith at left back and Fatai Lashe can run the midfield. But from the perspective of Lahoud and Kanate, I'd imagine playing for your native country or ancestral country for Kanate is a pretty big thing, pretty big source of pride for them, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. We wish those two nothing but the best. We hope that all goes well for their prospective countries over the weekend. And I think there's some questions up in the air. If things go well there's the potential going forward. Maybe those two might have to miss a playoff game. Let's keep our fingers crossed. Maybe that doesn't happen. But let's worry about that when the time gets here. Good stuff, Rob, as always. Appreciate it. Good job on the write-up over the weekend as well. I know you stayed up and burned the midnight oil that night.
I did. That was a late one, but happy to do it. And we'll do it again down at Sluggerfield.
Awesome. Enjoy the trip, and don't get thrown out, all right?
If I get thrown out of the press box, that's a problem.
Knock on wood. Knock on wood. Brad Weigel, your final thoughts as we get out of here?
Seen a lot of stuff on Twitter this week from other clubs and their fans and so-called experts, and I just want to put a stat out there for some of the people who hate on FC Cincinnati. You look at what's indicative of success, and then that's beating the top competition in the league. And FC Cincinnati has 7 wins against playoff teams right now. Louisville City has 5, and Pittsburgh, our other closest rival, only has 3. So that's getting it done. So I just it leads me to be confident on how the rest of this year is going to turn out, and especially heading into the playoffs, where hopefully we'll go on and get a title for this city.
Absolutely. I love it. And that's a great stat. 7 wins over playoff teams is pretty impressive. So good stuff, Brad. As always, appreciate you being with us.
Thanks, Nick.
Oh, Nick, I don't hear that very often.
Nicholas.
I'm sure I'm going to be hearing it in about 10 minutes when my
Mama
calls.
Snoobs is still commenting on Facebook for calling her trouble. So
well,
have to. What's your middle name? We'll roll that one out.
Final thoughts from the Wolfman, Bill Wolf.
So there's a tradition at FCC, 3 years running now, that late into the season, some subset of the team dyes their hair blonde.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, so I don't know why this happens or how it's begun and why it's continued to happen, but obviously everybody saw Richie Ryan quite white this weekend. I would say at least this year, if that's any indication, the blonde dyeing has been extremely successful. He had a phenomenal game. I'm looking forward to seeing if it's as successful with Blake Smith, who has shaved himself down to a very, very tight buzz cut and did blonde as well. with a darker beard, which is kind of odd. But hey, good for him. But we'll see if he has a phenomenal game as left back down there in Louisville. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, those were the days. I used to, believe it or not, gentlemen, I used to dye my hair blonde back in high school.
I don't believe it.
I don't believe it either.
I did. I used to. Not only did I used to dye my hair blonde, I used to have earrings in both ears. Well, I was such a rebel. Well, when you grew up with Mama Subs, you just had to rebel.
Oh, jeez.
I'm kidding. But no, I did. So I laugh at the guys doing it now, and every so often I kid with my wife. I say that I'm going to do it again, and she just looks at me in disgust. So
if we raise enough money for Sports Games for Kids or another charity, will you dye your hair?
Ooh. Now, if I can get away, since I'm doing it for charity, I'm on board, Brad. I am on board. You see these grays? They're gonna look great with blonde hair. But yeah, I will do it. What's the number?
Oh, I don't know.
William, well, we just gave him $2,000 at the foot golf event. So can we? Oh man, we got to think about this.
Oh, Sarah has already put a nope on Facebook.
Oh my gosh, my wife is watching. That's a first. Anyway, I believe it is time we're going to wrap up. It's for charity, Sarah, so we got to do it. I take one for the team. What can I say? Our thanks to James Denbo for being the episode captain this week, and of course to Luke Sassano from FC Cincinnati joining us here on Cincinnati Soccer Talk. Also, my thanks to Bill Wolf, Brad Weigel, and Rob Pierce. We hope everybody had a happy and safe Labor Day. Thank you for joining us here on your Labor Day. I'm Subs reminding you to watch your tackles, and we will see you all next week.